If you've ever worried about your husband drinking too much, or even worse, driving after he's been drinking and all the heartache that could cause, you're going to be on the edge of your seat for Amanda's story. Her husband was arrested for driving under the influence. And today we're diving into how she not only faced that devastating moment, but used it as a catalyst to build a stronger, more connected marriage. How did she find the hope and the strength and a way forward? And what does she want you to know if you're in a similar crisis? You're about to find out. I'm Laura Doyle, New York Times bestselling author, and I was the perfect wife until I got married. This is the Empowered Wife podcast. My guest, Amanda, had already been struggling with her husband's lies, stonewalling, depression, and alcoholism when he was arrested for driving under the influence. That's what made her look for help, which came in the form of a book. Now he's sober, and the two of them talk, flirt, and snuggle like teenagers in love. She's going to tell us how she did it so you can do it too. Amanda, welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm excited.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I do appreciate it. And I'm glad I get to share my story.
Cool. I can't wait to hear the whole thing. I love to start with the bad old days. What was going on in your marriage in those bad old days?
Well, let me preface this podcast with the fact that it's not even as much about my husband as what it was with me, because after finding the book, and you'll hear why, but after finding the book, I realized it was me who really caused his downfall. So just and you'll hear me cry, and I'm a crier, so this, and it's dear to my heart that I share this book because of that. So back in the bad old days, we've been married for almost 29 years. And so in the beginning, I was a yeller. And so if something didn't get done right, or it wasn't done on my time that I wanted, all of those things, I was very much the one who would just ream my husband. And I would just yell and scream and think that I'm getting my point across and never really getting my point across. So there were so many years of that, so many good years though, where we, thrived. But we did have some years where he decided that it was best for us not to be together, and he left me.
Oh,
So that happened. Divorce was on the table. He filed about 6 years into our marriage. And because in reality, it was my fault, to be honest. But things got better. We reconciled. We were able to back together, stronger. But my controlling, which is a really big problem, that I had, my yelling, and then come to find out my disrespect, is ultimately what eventually led my husband down the path of depression. And so ultimately it did lead to the DUI. But like I said, there was so many great times. But the depression, my controlling, all of that just built up to the point of him having just the moment of, I'm going to drink and drive, and which led him to getting pulled over, which led him to going to jail. I went and picked him up the day that happened. And instead of my typical, I'm going to ream you, I was just quiet. I was just quiet. I I just didn't know. I just didn't know how to really deal with it. Um, but I told him, I said, if things don't change, if you don't make the decision to get help, then I will file for divorce. And that was one of the hardest things because he had always threatened divorce and always throughout the years saying, I should leave you. You're horrible to me. I should leave you. And I'd be like, well, there's the door. I'm not making that choice for you. It's your choice. And of course he never did. Um, and I never, even though divorce was always on my mind, um, just because of the things and issues that we had dealt with his alcoholism, the lies, the hiding of drinking, just all of those things. Uh, it was there. It was in the back of my mind. Like I could just easily walk away. I have all the reasons to. Um, but to be honest, God told me divorce is not an option. But this time I think I felt like this could be an option. Like he's gone too far. He's put too many people at risk. He's put our livelihoods at risk. He put other people on the road at risk. And I was like, this time, like things have got to change. And so he did choose to go to rehab. And so he did spend 10 days in a detox and then he spent 30 days in a rehab. And so in that time period, about halfway through um, him going to rehab is when I decided that, you know what, he's getting help. So I think it's about time that I get help because I realized like played a huge part in this breakdown between us and especially his breakdown in general because he would always tell me and I didn't think about it, but he'd always say, I have a boss at work and then I have to come home to a boss.
Mm.
And I always thought, no, I'm just like saying, do the things that need to get done around the house, like all those things. Like, I'm not your boss, I'm not your mother, but yet I did all those things. I did. Even though we don't think of them as that, we don't think of the ways that we act and the things that we do as being a boss or a mom or all those things. They are very much so.
You're just trying to get things done. You see what needs to
Yes.
get done, and you just were telling him what needed to get done, but it was landing like you were the boss, and yeah, of course he didn't like that. Who would like that? But there's something you said though. I mean, the way you are describing this, you're saying my control and my disrespect. It almost sounds like you're saying that's what caused him to drink and then get behind the wheel. Is that what you're saying?
It's not that it caused him to. Obviously, he made his own choices. Like he made his choices that day, and all the other days that he drove and probably had been drinking. He made those choices. But I will say that my controllingness, my disrespectfulness, my treating him less than, even though I didn't mean to, led to his culmination of the depression, which in turn made his thinking less clear. Because once you get it, I've been in depression before, and once I get into it, it's like you're not thinking clearly. Like it's you're just overtaken by that. And I think he just he made that choice with not a clear head at all. And so yes, I played a role. I did. I played a
Mm.
role.
It- That's an enormous amount of accountability. And I think a lot of people would say that that you didn't play a part, that is not, it's not your fault. You had nothing to do with it. It was all his choice. And I hear you just having a different perspective, kind of a unique perspective that this is how I contributed. So you, instead of being the victim of his decision, uh, I hear you saying like there were things that I could have done differently, which actually sounds kind of empowered.
Yes, and I do wish I would have handled things differently within our marriage. I do wish that I found your book way sooner. um, I wish all of those things would have happened because I think it would have made a big difference. I think the times that we were good, those years that were great, um, I think those could have continued. I think if I would have realized the role I was playing and changed that role to actually be the wife and not the mother and not the boss and not all those things, then I think we would have stayed on the path that we're on now. And I think it
This,
would have changed tremendously.
I mean, that is so much humility. That's a lot of courage and vulnerability. And I just find it really appealing. And anyway, it's just great to get to hear it from your perspective, exactly how you see it now. So, all right, so then what happened? So you decided to start working on yourself while he was working on himself.
I did. And so I did start counseling and I started, working through how I was feeling about everything because I didn't go off. I didn't have a yelling moment. I didn't lose my crap, basically. I did not lose that control when this all went down. And so I think that was like a light bulb switch of, okay, like this has happened. This has been my worst fear. In all the years that he'd been drinking. I
Oh,
mean, we're here now. We're here
that's
now.
right. But like the most painful thing that could happen happened,
Yes,
right?
and I had told him on and off for the quite a few years that he had dealt with on and off drinking and on and off drinking and recognizing it but then not doing anything about it. And I kept saying like this is what you're putting us at risk for. This is what you're putting us at risk for. And that was always my biggest fear. I have so many fears obviously, but I think that was one of the biggest ones in our relationship is this is a possibility. And he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. And then here it is. And so I joined Facebook, lovely world. I joined a group called Wives of Alcoholics and just went and was reading through all, the different stories and all of that stuff. And I was scrolling through, and I don't know if it was the day it was posted, because it was posted on August the 20th of last year, or if maybe it was a few days after that. But I was scrolling through, and this woman posted an episode, and it was episode 187 of your podcast. And it was, a woman whose husband was an addict to different things, including alcohol. And I listened to that episode and I was like, well, okay, Google, send me right to this woman's book because I've got to read this book. Like all the things that that wife was explaining that she did and the things that changed, I was like, okay, like I'm all about this. And so I Googled you and went straight and found the book and I read like Amazon gives you, that little preview and I started reading through and I was like, okay. And I was like, bye now. I was like, I've got to have this book.
Yeah.
So I got it and I started reading it and I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, everything that you had went through, all the things that you talked about and all the things the other women talked about being disrespectful, picking his clothes out. I always picked his clothes out. Like I always laid them on the bed. He'd be like, "What do you want me to wear?" And I'd be like, "Oh, this is great. Here, wear this." Um, all of those things. I was, and I mean, I knew I was controlling, but I don't think I realized I was to the detriment of the controllingness over him and over everything, honestly. Um, but I was just I was stunned, and I just kept thinking to myself, this is me. This is me. This is why things are like as bad as they are. This is why. And so I really started deep diving into the book, and I really started thinking back of all the times that I was disrespectful, all the times that I said to him, um, well, I mean, I can do it. I can go build a fence. I build a fence. I can do X, Y, Z. Isn't it nice that you have a wife who can do all these things? Like I even said to him one time, I was said, um, I'm trying to think of how I put it, but it was something to the point where, I can do anything you can do. Only I probably said it a lot worse, to
Yeah.
him, to
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
It was probably not in that nice a way, but I was basically, yeah, like I can do anything you can do. And,
Like, I don't really need you, and you're not really contributing
yeah,
anything here. Yeah.
yeah. And so I just, every time I read a story that just resonated, I just kept thinking to myself, like, this, I should have never been like this. And growing up, I lost my mom when I was 10 years old.
Explains a
And
lot, doesn't it?
it does. It does. Because
Yeah.
I was raised by a father who yelled a lot.
Yeah.
So I got that out of it. But I wasn't, no, I mean, like is mentioned so many times by so many women, we were never taught just how to be respectful, but we're always taught all the ways that are disrespectful. The more I got to thinking about it, I was like, yeah, like we're taught that we should be the wife, right? So that means the wife does everything. The wife cooks all your meals and hands you the plate. The wife picks out your
Yeah.
clothes to make sure everything looks perfect. The wife does all these things.
She builds the fence. Right. Yeah.
Exactly. And yet nobody says, hey, wait, that's disrespectful
Yeah.
to them. But so yeah, so I deep dived into the book and just read it. And there were several weeks left of his stint in rehab. And during that time, he would write me letters and we would talk on the phone. And let me tell you, that was the longest that we had ever been apart in our, at that time, almost 28 years of marriage. Was that time. And he was hours away from me. So it's not like I could go and visit or anything like that. So phone calls, we didn't have a phone call for over a week. And I thought I was going to die because that's the longest we've ever went without, communicating with each other in some way. Um, so when he got out, I went and picked him up, and on the drive home, which was 3 hours, I just apologized my butt off. I laid it all out and told him just how sorry I was that I was the way that I was.
Oh, wow.
And was just, I just bawled and cried and just did nothing but apologize, apologize, apologize for everything, being disrespectful, being controlling, just all those things that I thought I was doing right by him and wasn't. I just was probably the most vulnerable that I had ever been in my life. And what is funny though is I always had said what was on my mind. And that was another thing that I learned through the book too was I don't always need to speak my mind. I don't always have to say everything that's on my mind. And because I heard so many times by so many men say, well, we can't read your mind. We can't read your mind. Well, I made it a point that my husband never had to read my mind. Like I put it all out there, laid it all out, said everything I had to say, everything he needed to know, everything. So that there was no question of what was on my mind.
Even if it was disrespectful or rude or
Even if
right,
it
like,
was disrespectful or
yeah,
rude or
yeah,
criticizing, I
critical.
was really bad at being critical and not realizing just how critical I was being because I was raised with the mindset by my dad that if you want something done right, you do it yourself. And so, if that's just how I
Yeah.
was, and that's what I did. And
It didn't serve you that well, it sounds like. So, I mean, I'm loving this story about you apologizing on the car ride home, kind of repeatedly, it sounds like, and thoroughly and very accountably, like really honest apology. And because really on paper, he drank and then drove, and then he spent all this time in rehab away from you. That it could have been a very different conversation you were having with him on the way home from rehab, like you better never do this again, or I had to do everything while you
yes,
were gone, or
yes, it could have. It could have definitely gone the other way. And I think had I not decided that I needed to make changes and that I needed to grow as a person, then that probably would have never happened. Um,
yeah,
but
it's a big
I
deal.
had
Yeah.
so many people, I had especially one good friend that I worked with that listened to everything I said, and she would bounce stuff back. And I think just being able to speak it out and to just put it out there of, okay, especially after reading the book and being like, okay, I read this, this was me. And just knowing then that if I spoke it out, that I made it real and that I had to make changes because I didn't want to be that way. And it was funny because my children thought pretty much the same way. We have two kids and who are both adults, and they both were they both didn't want to mess with mama.
Yeah.
Like they both didn't want to get yelled at. Neither one of them wanted the wrath. And so they pretty much thought the same thing too, that mom's controlling and, and critical. And not that I was super critical with them, but I know I said stuff to both of them that were, criticizing at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, just that reflection of realizing like I it if he can go and change and make changes and do things differently, then for us both, need to also do the same. It's time. I
Wow.
wish it happened sooner, but it's time now that
Well, it's
I make those
impressive.
changes.
It's
Yeah.
impressive. That is so accountable, especially at a time when you could have been really stuck on blaming him. And it's a tough moment. It's a very, very tough moment to like you described reading the book and going, "Oh, that's me." Like that's a painful moment right there.
It was because, like I said, I didn't think. I mean, yeah, I knew I was controlling. That had always been an issue.
But you probably felt justified. Like he was drinking,
I
right?
did. Yeah,
Yeah.
I did. I felt justified in a lot of the things that I did and said, um, because I thought I was being a good wife for one.
Yeah.
in all,
Yeah.
in all honesty,
Yeah.
um, But then there were times where no, I was just being the not nice person because it was my way or the highway, basically.
Yeah. Well, it just takes a lot of openness and willingness and courage, I think, to have that insight and then to act on it by expressing your remorse through that apology that you gave him so vulnerably. How did he respond to that?
He cried right along with me, and he accepted my apology. He also apologized because he also agreed that I was the way that I was, and that yes, that I don't know that he necessarily agreed that what I did played a role in his choices, but I think once I explained it to him, he kind of understood how I seen it. Um, but he was also very remorseful. He also apologized a lot. Um, he also admitted that even though I was controlling, that he gave up some of his control to me.
Mm.
I think we kind of realized, I think when you have a really long relationship, as long as we had been, 28, we'd been together over 28 years, married almost 28 at that point. Um, I think some men who are not super confident, and he wasn't because I mean, I didn't make him feel that way. They kind of just give up. And I
Yeah.
think he said, I did. I gave you some of my control.
Wow.
Like, I kind of gave it away because, you were so controlling anyway. And then I just let you just take it and run. And I
Wasn't worth
did.
the fight to,
Right.
yeah.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
he was accountable too, it sounds like.
Yes. Yes,
Oh,
he was very accountable and he was very apologetic. And, and we talked about a lot of the stuff that happened throughout the years and how we could have handled things differently. I mean, we had probably one of the best. He didn't stonewall. That was the greatest thing ever is that he really opened up and he was vulnerable with me. And typically that was not the situation throughout our marriage. There was a few times where he actually would open up, but that wouldn't last very long because basically I would go back to my same old ways, and he would want to shut down again. So the fact that he didn't stonewall and that he opened up was like, I mean, amazing. It was like the sun shined in,
wow.
and like all the darkness started to go away, which really, really helped tremendously.
So you created this moment of enormous connection, more than a moment. Sounds like it was a long car ride of
Yes.
connection by taking this approach, this humble, accountable approach. Uh, and I can imagine this is kind of a mountaintop experience you guys are having. He's just come out of rehab and you have had this new awareness and accountability. So what about once you got home? What happened then? Regular
Um,
life is back.
it was an adjustment because there was still a lot of stuff to deal with. Um, we still had all of the legal ramifications that were going to be ahead of us. But
Painful. Yeah.
yes, but
Expensive.
we
Yeah.
did, yeah, but we did take some time for ourselves. So, a few days after he got out, we actually took a trip and we stayed gone for about a week. We visited some places that we wanted to go, just to have that reconnection and to just really start writing a new chapter, basically, of this is how we're going to work on things. This is how we're going to talk about things. And and just having that time together, which was really, really nice. And that's really when I started using the skills. Um, because, of course, if you read the book, you want to utilize all of those skills to the best of your ability because you want to start seeing all those results. And I will say, like, before he came home, the first one I really started using after I read the book was self-care.
Oh,
And I
great.
was not good with that. Yes, I'd like to go and take a hot bath every now and then, but to really go and do things for myself was not a huge thing. It was once one of those, well, if I have the extra money, then I'll go get a massage every now and then or something like that. But I really made it a point because when he came home after our trip and we was actually back to our home and like this is the new beginning, this is the new start. There were so many triggers for me. um because a lot of the things that he did when he was drinking, I found out about and realized like what he was doing. So anytime he would leave the house, that was a trigger. Anytime he was gone too long, that was a trigger. And I would just, in the back of my mind, it's like, okay, well, what is he going to do? Is he going to go out and is he going to drink? Is he going to do all these things? And was there some hiccups? Absolutely. We all fail. We all try and we fail, and we just had to pick ourselves back up and keep on trying. And that's exactly what both of us did. Because I know there were a few times that I failed in using the skills. But so,
Well,
yeah, so there was a lot of things to work through, especially with the triggering when he came home. So self-care was one of those things where I'm like, I have to do this because I have to stay on my page and not try to get back on his and let that controlling start really going again. And so I would go for walks. I would sit in the tub and just relax. And I would go get more massages. I would go talk to my friends. A lot of the things that I didn't do because, as sometimes he would say it, I wanted to be up his butt. Um, I would go because he's always like, "You never go away. You're always there." Um, so I realized like I've got to make some things about me and not focus on him
yeah. And we're
because I
laughing
knew
about it, but that's kind of like, ouch, right? Like,
yes.
that's
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. So yeah, self-care was one of the very first things that I used and was more than happy to. I had taken a part-time job at that time period, and so I did have the extra money, so I was able to go and treat myself to a few more massages than usual. I was able to go and just do some things with friends, and so that was really, really nice to just get my mind off of the what ifs. Because the what ifs can run you down a really
Oh,
long rabbit hole for a really
yeah.
long time.
And it sounds like you saw this self-care as a like insurance against being controlling. And then and I think I might be reading between the lines here, but it sort of sounds like you were thinking if I am controlling again, that is actually going to push him to drink again. Is that right? Or
It was a concern. It
yeah,
was.
like there
It,
it felt like something you just didn't want to push on. You didn't want to try that out, it sounds like.
right. And I will say there were times when those triggers hit that I would just break down and just have to be vulnerable with him and be like, look, this, and that was another being vulnerable was the next thing that I used. And I mean, I was vulnerable a lot. And I would be, instead of getting mad and instead of doing the silent treatment that I would typically treat him with, I would just tell him, like, look, this is a trigger. Okay. I'm upset. Yes, I'm upset, but this is a trigger, and can we talk it over? And at this point, he was better at talking things over with me than he ever had been. I mean, ever. And he'd be like, I understand. He was like, you have to learn, start trusting me again. I've made all these bad choices. And he's like, I get it. And so every time there would be an issue come up, he would apologize to me because he understood like what I was going through. And so it was nice.
Oh gosh, it sounds amazing. It sounds like there's so
Yes.
much emotional safety there that he's not having to defend himself at all because you were triggered, but you were owning it. Like this is something that I have to deal with because this is
Yes.
triggering me. And he was trying to offer reassurance, which what a gosh, what a pleasure after all those years of maybe you saying like, hey, watch how many drinks you have, or maybe you shouldn't drink tonight, or however you were saying
Yeah.
things to have it be you just going, this is a trigger and him being like, oh, let me reassure you.
Yeah.
I can see why that would be wow. That's a big switch.
Yes. Yes. And I
Amazing.
will say that has he been sober this whole entire year? Because he got out on September the 6th. No, he made a few choices and he's drank, but he's never done it. And he's sober now, has been now for several months. Um, but he never went to the extreme. He had a drink. He never went to the extreme. He decided to quit hiding it for one, because he realized that I'm going to know anyway. It's written on his face every single time. I don't know why they think they can always get away with it, but for some reason they do.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but it was him being accountable, which then helped me back off too, because the few times that he had some slips, he at first tried to like play cool and coy and but then he was like no, and he did admit it to it, and we worked through it and talked through it. And I think the fact that having the skills of me getting to that place where I don't have to yell and scream at him. I don't have to criticize him. I have to just
Yeah.
talk through this with him. And I have to be his cheerleader and not his coach yelling and screaming you did something wrong, you know.
Huge.
And so that totally was a game changer in our relationship. And it was probably about I want to say 4 or 5 months, maybe. Um, our son had moved away and he moved back, and him and I would have conversations, and he would say, Mom, he was like, you've changed so much.
Wow. Wow. You must have felt like $1 million
I
hearing
did. I
that.
did. I did. I did because I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, this is the best feeling ever, because not only did my husband concur with that, but to have my son be like, Mom, like talking to you is like talking to a different person now. I would get upset with certain things, and I would make
Sure.
my mind set. I would yell it to the rooftop sometimes with my kids, but for him to be like, Mom, you have just made this 180, and you're not yelling. What? Like, and it was just amazing to hear, because I felt like I had, of course, failed a few times and didn't handle things the best way,
Of
but
course.
I also knew like I was on that path just from hearing it from him. And then I did have those moments. There was a few moments where my husband was just like, he told people, um, we were at church and at a dinner, and I was telling all these women about your book and how it has changed so much in our relationship. And he was like, yeah, he was like, she's like a different person.
Wow.
And I was just like, oh,
Yeah,
I was like,
right?
it's working.
Oh my gosh, it must have just melted you. Like, yay.
It did. It did. So gratitude was the next thing that I used, and it became not necessarily a game or anything like that, but it was like he then, once I started thanking him for all the things that he had been doing, all the changes that he made, the new job that he got, going to rehab, doing all those things for us. And I say for us because, when you become married, you become one. And so, what one does hurts the other. And I think that's too another thing that most people don't realize. When we're good, we're both good. And when one's struggling, we're both struggling. And, but I would thank him just for anything he did and still do. And he would be like, well, I thank you too for, XYZ. And, there was just a very few times in our years that he would like really thank me for anything that I did. But then I was being a boss and a mom, so I don't think you'd really want to thank them all the time either.
So you changed that culture. You created a culture of gratitude in your home.
Yes, yes. And it's the sweetest thing when we're laying in bed and it's something he did something that day and I'd be like, thanks so much for, XYZ and he would be like, well, thank you. You did stuff too today or, whatever the case was. And it just melts my heart to know that he's thankful for me just as much as I'm thankful for him.
Yeah, it sounds so loving. It sounds sweet. It's like, what a great way to live.
It is very much so. And then the next, I'm looking at my notes, but the next thing that I also did was restored that respect. So in every situation that we have since faced, I've tried not to give my opinion on everything. Um, I was very good at that and still am very good at that.
Definitely have an opinion about things. It
Definitely
sounds
have an
like,
opinion. But
and you
at
keep it to
this
yourself
point,
now. It sounds like
yes,
sometimes, yeah.
yes. But at this point, I'm trying not to. I'm trying not to make decisions for him. I was really good at that too. And was trying. I've been trying to just let him do his thing and let him be the man that he is. And not pick out his clothes. If he asked me, if this is great, and I'd be like, you know what you want to wear, just wear whatever. Like I don't I don't care. It's whatever you want to do. And that whatever you think is probably one of the taglines that I have probably used the most in the last year. Because he does have a great head on his shoulders and he has made some great decisions and he has stood by me. And so I think that he can make those choices for himself and that he is going to make the right ones. And I've told him that many times that I do believe now that he is in a better place, that he's no longer in that depressive state, no longer with that mindset of, I just don't care. I think he knows he can make any decision and he's going to make a good one for both of us.
So he's no longer depressed and he is sober
Mhm.
and he's got a new job, I hear. So,
Yes.
I mean, things are going, that's pretty amazing, right? Those are big intractable problems that people have with excessive drinking and depression. And it sounds like it's solved for the most part. Is that right?
I believe so. I mean, every day is a new day, and you know, are there going to be times where we fail? Absolutely, but everything is new. And yeah, we snuggle on the couch. One of the first things, so the desire, I had said for so long, I want a new couch. We had a couch that was like 13 years old. And I was like, I really want a new couch, but I want one, a reclining one, because after a long day,
Because
we're
they're
both so
comfortable.
tired. Yes.
Yeah,
And I was
yeah.
like, I just want to put my feet up. And so I told him, I said, I really would like to have a couch with recliners that we can sit beside of each other. Because we'd always sit in one corner and I'd sit on the other corner of our little sectional. And I said, I want to be able to recline and sit beside you now. And that was one of the things, that was one of the first purchases we made several months after he came home. He said, yes, we could, because I asked him. Usually I wouldn't ask, I would just go and do whatever and get
Yeah.
whatever. And so I asked him, I was like, can we do this? And he said, yes. He said, let's do this. And
Uh,
so to this day, it's, him on the end, me right beside of him in my recliner part, and us sitting there having, eating, watching TV together, picking on each other, just doing all the fun teenage things beside of each other.
uh,
So yes, it has made such a huge difference.
oh, I love it. I love it. So, and it sounds so, yeah. So, what is your relationship like now? Tell us a little more about that. It sounds fantastic.
um, well, we talk more. We actually discuss and go over whether it's something that came up that, needs discussed, that happened, or, I got triggered by something, or, just whatever the case may be. We actually talk. He doesn't stonewall me. We just sit down and have a conversation about it. I don't get all yelling and screaming and carrying on and acting a fool. And we just have those moments where we just, come together as one, in decisions and just in everything that we've been doing. A lot more playfulness.
Oh,
That's been nice. A lot more. One of the one of the things that I have always enjoyed is to get a text, whether it's just a good morning text or I'm thinking about you text, or anything like that. And so he had sent me some a few times while he was at work on his lunch break. And I told him one day, I said, I would love, or I said, I love when you send me those texts in the morning that you're thinking of me. Or I said, it really means a lot, that I'm on your mind. And so I love that. And almost every day now for the last, and I said this probably 2 months ago. And so almost every day now, I'll get a good morning text.
oh,
Um,
sweet. He
yes,
knows how to make you happy. He knows how to
yes,
make you.
yes. And it doesn't take a lot. I'm not much of a materialistic person. So those moments, time for me is the most important thing. I appreciate time with him. I appreciate time with everybody. But yeah, just getting that little reassurance that, he's thinking of me, just like brightens my day. Like I'll be on cloud nine for the rest of the day just getting that because it's just this, like I immediately smile as soon as I see it, and then I'll text him back and, good morning to you too. Hope your day's going good. I love you. We've gotten to this thing where we send each other little reels off of Facebook. He's found these little characters called Choco and Pancake, and all these little scenarios and situations and stuff. And he'll send them to me, and he'll be like, "You're my little pancake." And I swear, it's like we're teenagers again.
So cute. He's trying to make you smile. He's trying to or make
Yes.
you laugh.
A lot of PDA.
Oh, nice. Public
uh,
displays of affection. So yeah,
yeah.
it is like teenagers again. Now, what
Yes.
about so he used to threaten divorce a lot. It was on the back of your mind a lot as well. Um, is that coming up?
No, and I don't think it ever will again. Um, that was something that neither one of us ever really wanted. I know he didn't. Um, and I can say that I know he didn't because one didn't happen. Um, I know he
That's
didn't
good
because
proof. Yeah.
even 6 years in when he left and filed for divorce, it didn't happen. And every time that was a thought, I think it was just because he just wanted to be hurtful. And so there's no reason to be hurtful now, whatsoever.
Wow.
And like I said, even though I brought that up when he got the DUI, um, I can honestly say that I don't know that I would have gone through with it. I might have filed, but I don't think it would have ever come to me actually signing the papers to do so. Because, like I mentioned, God had told me years ago that divorce is not on the table for me. Divorce is not a thing.
Yeah.
And I believe when you, and I'm going to say this because I know a lot of women are probably not going to agree. And I'm not saying that if you're in a abusive relationship or, you know, anything like that, where, you're getting obviously beat on or, any of those bad things where, yes, you need to leave. I'm all for that. I'm not saying don't if you're in those situations where you're, something really bad could happen.
Yeah.
But I think if you truly love someone, despite all of everything that we've gone through, when you truly love someone and you care about them, then you need to work. You need to work on it. You need to give them grace. You need to be able to see them and not the bad, not what's going on in the moment. You need to realize um, that they're worth fighting for. Our marriage was worth fighting for. I didn't put 28 years of my life. Now, mind you, we got married. I was 4 months shy of my 18th birthday.
Wow. It's young.
So I
Really.
didn't put 28 years, now almost 29 years into a marriage just to see it.
Fall apart.
Yes, exactly.
You aren't going to do it.
No. So no, that is something that will never be on the table. Again, we both have agreed that it's till death.
And nobody wants to divorce from sitting on the couch picking at each other and having public displays of affection and nobody wants to have an end to that really. So in the texts where he's calling you this
Exactly.
little pancake or whatever, right? That's so so what is your tip to somebody who is where you were? Her husband just got a DUI. Her worst fear, her worst nightmare just came true. She's known he's had a drinking problem for a lot of years. It's been stressful. It's has been on the table, but she wants what you have now, where it's sweet and loving, and there's emotional safety, and she's like her son is saying, "Gosh, mom, you've changed, right?" Like, what should she do? What's your best tip for somebody who feels like they're married to an alcoholic?
My first tip is to get your book first and foremost, and start deep diving in that book and everything that resonates. Start thinking opposite, start doing opposite. Um, whether it's being controlling, whether it's being disrespectful, whatever those cases are. And then give your husband grace, and don't think of it as I'm trying to change him. It's I'm trying to change me. And that was the whole thing too, is that I
Mhm.
was working on me. I wanted to be the better version of me. I didn't want to come back into this marriage with the same baggage that I had had for all those years. I wanted to get rid of that. I wanted to be a new version of me. And I think every woman needs to look at it that way, of that I just want to improve myself. I want to be at the top of the top in that aspect, and that it's up to me. It's up to me to control myself. It's up to me to control how I feel, how I show up every day. It's up to me. It's not up to them. It's not up to the way they act, or any of that. So, yeah, definitely deep dive into the book, and start using the skills. That self care, I think there's so many women who don't realize how important that is, because I always, even raising the two kids, because he worked a lot. So I felt like a single parent a lot of the time. Um, I would never put myself first. I always put everyone else first. And so I think that I struggled a lot in that area of self care and just doing things for me to make myself feel better, because you get stressed and you don't have those moments of just, I got to decompress. I got to let things go. If you don't have that, it just builds. It's just like everything else. If you keep stuffing it in, stuffing it in, stuffing it in, eventually it's just going to explode, and it all comes back out, and it comes back out in the wrong way, not the right way. So yeah, I definitely believe that that would be the one way that they could start making some major changes, just focus on themselves and just, really want to be that 110% you, and not worry about anyone else.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and in the beginning, I mean, those are wisdom bombs there. So I love that. In the beginning, you were taking a lot of responsibility for the two of you being in this situation with his DUI. Do you now take some credit for him being sober?
I do take a little bit,
I
but
give
it's
you it. I
every
give it to
day.
you
But
too.
yeah,
Yeah, I give it to you too. But anyway, go ahead. Say some more about it.
well, but every day it's a choice. Every day it's a choice for me to show up and be the better version of me. It's every day it's a choice for him to be the better version of him, and to not go back down that path. So yes, while I improve myself, help improve his choices, yes. Um, but still yet, we're all responsible for ourselves, and the choices that we make. And so, I'll take this much,
You
but I'll
used your
give him
influence.
all the
Yeah,
rest.
sure. Oh, we give him huge credit for being sober too. But I just hear you using your influence wisely and feeling confident about that. Yeah, which is huge, right? Like
Yes,
you now know something about how to create a marriage where your husband is sober that you didn't used to know. And
correct.
you not only know it, but you do it. So
Correct.
kind of a big deal, right? I think a lot of women would like to have that, what you've created. So it's very impressive. Yeah. What do you think you would say to yourself if you could go back in time and tell you what you know now?
I would probably tell myself that I don't always have to do what everybody tells you you should do. I think, and I'll put this in perspective of now we have the internet. So we have Google and we have all these ways of researching all this stuff. So let's just say my old self was now, and then myself now was in the future, and I came back. And I would tell myself, you know what? Why don't you deep dive what disrespect is? Why don't you deep dive on what controlling can do? Um, why don't you talk to women who don't pick out their men's clothes for them to wear?
Where do you find these women? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who let their men be the head of the household. Um, all of those things, because I think had I not been learning from the generation before me, what that women are supposed to do all those things, are supposed to do everything, cook all the meals, put hand the plate to their men with all their food on it, and all of those things of doing everything for them and them not doing things for themselves. Had I not learned that, and learn what I know now, would have made a huge difference. And so I would tell myself too that things can change and things will change. Um, but you
Mm.
got to show up as your best self. So let's do that. Let's show up as your best self. And obviously, you're going to come across your book. And I wish so many times, I wish that I would have had that 5 years into my marriage, 2 years into my marriage, 10 years into my marriage, 15 years into my marriage, all of that before now.
Wow.
Yeah, before
Do you
now.
think you would have been as open and ready?
I think there probably would have been a few moments in time I would have been.
Yeah.
Um, I think there were a few moments in time where I would have been like, there's no
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
There's no
Yeah.
way it's up to me.
It's his fault,
Um,
right? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, because a lot of times I think that that's what we do is we go by what their decisions were and the choices that they make, and they're like, well, it's their fault. And I think that was why I went the opposite direction and looked at what I did to play in that role. Um, and I will say, I even made it public. I made it public to the role that I played. When he went to court for the DUI, I actually stood in front of the judge and the prosecutor, and I stood up and said I played a role in this.
Wow. You did?
I did. I stood up in church and said the same thing.
Wow.
Yes.
Amazing. That is incredible. I've never heard of that before. I'm so impressed. So, what did you say when you said I played a role in it? What did you say?
Um, I told I said in front of them that I realized that there was a lot of things that I did over the years, and I'm going to get emotional about this. But I said that there was a lot of things over the years that I had said and done that put him down the path of depression and that made him choose the bottle to squash it and to squash how he felt. And I think had I not been that way, that he wouldn't have made the choices that he did.
Chills. Amazing.
So yeah, I definitely wish that I found your book a lot sooner, um, and realized that I had all the power to change things, and it wasn't changing him; it was really just changing me.
Wow, you're so wise. I'm so impressed with you. I'm so moved by your incredible story and so inspired by what you've accomplished and the level of accountability. I definitely want to give you my Best Wife Award. You
Thank
are
you.
amazing. You have made a playful relationship, loving, snuggling, emotionally safe relationship, fixed your family. And I just give you so much credit for being so humble and so accountable and being an inspiration to the rest of us. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. But thank you for putting your book out there and for being a voice, for us women, being that sounding board, all of those things. You know, after I found your book, it was like podcast after podcast after podcast. I was like, I want to hear more. And I think too, women should jump on those podcasts and listen to them, and anything that resonates, just follow through. Because I think that has definitely helped a lot. And I think you're just amazing for, I said, I believe God like led me down the path to you, and your book. I've always believed that from the get-go, because I always believe things happen for a reason. And I think there was a huge reason that, I showed up in that group, and there was a reason why that girl posted that episode, because there's not been another time that an episode of yours has been posted in that group. But let me tell you, I shared your book in that group. I have shared your book everywhere. My friends that I knew were struggling, I've shared it with them. I've bought one for a friend. I bought one for a girl who just got married. I'm going to give it to my son's girlfriend, who he's going to propose to hopefully soon. Yeah, so all of anyone I know, I'm like, read the book. Just read the book. Trust me, it's all about you. Okay, you can make the difference. You can make the change. And I just thank you so much for writing it and just putting it out there. And I will sing your praises from here to the mountaintop, because you know what? I think it will I know it will change so many more lives and so many more marriages, just as it has changed mine.
Wow. Thank you so much. You are such a beacon of hope for what is possible for any wife who feels like she's married to an alcoholic. She wants to fix that. She wants to change it. And you actually sound like a future coach to me, because you are so passionate about this and you have transformed your family so big and yourself. And uh, I'm really glad we found each other.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Great job. If you enjoyed hearing the real life stories of how my guest made a struggling marriage into a playful, passionate marriage that lasts, then subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast so you can hear some more. Next week on the podcast, we're going to dive into verbal abuse and the 2 mistakes that you want to avoid, what to do. And in the meantime, I hope you're having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is that the Empowered Wife podcast has been downloaded over 5 million times, which woohoo, I'm pretty excited about, and I'm pretty grateful, because that means you've been sharing it. You've been listening to it. You've been telling your friends and your family and strangers on the train to listen to. And I am so grateful for your passion and enthusiasm for being on the mission to end world divorce with me. Thank you. For more on how to make your marriage playful and passionate without his conscious effort, even if it seems hopeless right now, check this out.